Howdy. I was just gonna do something brief that I just thought about prophets and particularly this crop of online believers and ministers. The last days group. I don't know. The people online that don't come from these approved places, and a lot of times. They can seem a little off putting or unconventional, or you sort of wonder if you are listening to something that's sketch. It's a bit like, it might seem like, when you order something off like a website from like a different country and it comes and you're like, okay. So, because, there's like no quality control and all that. And it might seem like that, but what it's really more like is, hold on. Anyways, it's more like I got an analogy of when before clothes were in department stores, before they were mass produced, before that was even a thing. Women typically did all the sewing in their house, and it actually took a while for mass produced clothes to catch on, because when you are making clothes for yourself and everyone in your house, and that is how everything has always been done, always. And then you have this concept of, you're like, well, but how are you going to know that it fits? And you know, it's a question of like, you think it's going to be lesser quality, and um, I think we're finding out. I mean, if you even care, I would imagine that those women who were skeptical of the mass produced transition were probably right. And I'm sure that it took some time. People didn't just instantly flock to that. I think it took a while. Maybe they had to make it seem like it was only for rich people, so that people would want to do that rather than make their own stuff. Um, but just imagine if, you know, we hadn't been persuaded by advertising and all this stuff, to buy, all of these copies of what other people have made, and we were still making our own stuff. And there was, millions of original dresses out there. I mean, you had to buy, um, what do you call it, patterns and stuff. So it's not like, well, I don't know. I think I mean, I'm sure there was a time before you even did that, but it's like, imagine how many original creations there would be out there if we were still making our own stuff. And that's kind of what I think God is trying to get back to spiritually. What may seem like to us like this kind of janky, uh, knockoff thing. I think it's because we're just not used to. We're spiritually used to these churches doing the research, finding out what the approved messages that people want to hear, them doing the quality control, and them doing the marketing research, and finding out what people want to hear more of, want to hear less of, and running the message through a filter that can then appeal to the most people so that they can, have church attendance. And I don't even know if that ever really worked for a while, or if we just felt like it did. And then we found out later, like, oh, this isn't working at all. This is terrible. This is producing like worms and nastiness. But so, God is bringing it back to the individual the church person of one, that, have we ever had a church of one? No, but I think that every individual that went to church, back in the day, was expected to have their own relationship with God when they got there. They didn't rely on, the leaders and, these people that were sort of the approved leadership that had the degrees and had the whatever. I mean, there was none of that. I mean, early church, it was just, have you heard, have you heard, have you heard, have you heard? And God was the main person that did it all. Um, so I think it's going to take some adjusting. I think that, you need to have a little bit of grace for the people who are saying they're hearing from God and seeing dreams, because just because you hear from God and just because He gives you some powerful message doesn't mean that once you hear from God, that's great. Now you have to understand what He's saying, which is a whole other thing. Which seems weird, but I mean, it's the same as if you meet any type of person. You got to learn their humor, learn when they're being serious, when they're this and that. So, God, even though God can give you a message and get a message across to you, you can still, I mean, that's what happened to me. Like when I had my experience, it's like I thought that I was going to go to heaven and all this stuff, and I didn't understand then. I just jumped the gun. I just assumed based on the information, based on my own whatever. Um, so there's misunderstandings, and sometimes we think that we understand what God is saying in the moment, and we have to wait for that thing to grow. There's something about the way that God talks to us that isn't just a one-dimensional. He could be saying something on so many different layers that you think that someone, something happened and it wasn't right, and it could be something slowly happening, something for I use the example of, like, when Jesus said, they were the Pharisees or whoever was like, what sign can you show us that you have the authority to do X, Y, and Z? And He said, destroy this temple and I'll raise it in 3 days. And or He said, I'll destroy the temple and raise it in 3 days, or whatever He said. And they were just like, what? I mean, they puzzled over that. And then, helpfully for us and our nice Bible that has been, you know, written by people who had 30 years of retrospect when they wrote it down. Then the next sentence is, he meant, when He spoke about the temple, He meant His body. Now, they didn't know that then. They probably didn't even know it when He died. They had no idea what was happening for a very long time after He said that. So that sentence was 30 years in the making. He wasn't speaking about the physical temple. He was speaking about His body. That's Jesus talking. So people tried to indict Him on that. I mean, I can't remember which gospel it says, but that's what they brought up, is that statement. So, holding people's feet to the fire and making them prove that they're hearing from God is not what you need to do. Those people need to continue to exercise their muscle and learn the voice of God. You need to give them grace, and at the same time, if they're saying something that you just think is all wackadoo wacky, you should be having your own relationship with God so that you can go to Him and asking Him, like, Lord, what is this? What is this? And He can say, they're misguided, help them. Or He's saying, I'm speaking through them. And if you're too scared to do that, or if you're too lazy to do that, then shut up and let them do what they do. If you're worried about them leading people astray, like, worry about pastor mega church leading millions of people astray, telling them, once saved, always saved. Worry about that. Don't worry about, the one believer mustering up all their courage on YouTube to say what they feel like God is telling them to say. So, yeah, I think we're moving to a very, I mean, below boutique type of Christianity. We're talking about sewing your own clothes, with the pattern that God gave you. And you know what else? It's like those people, there's still people that do that, that sew their own clothes. Those super artistic, those people that are already artistically minded, fashion people. Guess what they look like going down the street? Guess what they look like? They don't have an approved look. They're wearing uh, things that are beyond. It's different because they themselves made it out of what makes them happy. They didn't go to Target or wherever, just pick the most, the most in style, with it, mass production place. They didn't get their stuff from there. They put fabrics together that it's too expensive for them to do it, because they would have to do it. They would have to mass produce that, and they can't do that. So, and you're looking at stuff talking about, ooh, what's that? It's like it's the most expensive thing ever, and you think it's like ugly because it doesn't look like all the mass produced clothes. So, just I think just a reminder to uh, Christians need to adjust their thinking about, it's something I've seen over the years. It's like when you see some person who just cares a little bit less what other people think about their zeal for God, and you see them slowly get pushed to the side because they don't really. And it's like one of those. It's like, it's fine if you don't want to hang out with them, but I just never understood why they were somehow the least valuable for having a more unique approach, and just sort of having a much less capability of fooling anybody into believing they were God's messenger when they weren't. So, anyways, I just felt like I should leave that tidbit while it was on my mind, and y'all have a blessed day.